good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Welcome to CJ Rose, the conversations with CJ Rose and the time and what must be done. We are broadcasting again this week live from East London and also in connection with our sister station over there in Florida, Flex FM. We just want to say a big up to TC Flex and the Flex FM family. I hope everybody can hear me. For all of those who have been following this show for the last 5 weeks, this kind of fell into my lap, really. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm even very rarely on social media, but I'm kind of rising to the challenge. And for those who have been listening continuously for the last, I'd say 4 weeks, we do have so much lined up for you. We keep it live because we like the temperament of a live broadcast, because you get to see everything as it happens. Unfortunately, you also have to deal with the technical issues that we incur as the two sister stations, one in the UK, one in Florida, come together and do something positive to get information out to our communities all over the world. So we thank you for continuing to watch us. And we also welcome your comments and feedback. If you're watching on MediaNet platform, please send us in your feedback. If you're watching on any of the Flex FM platforms from over in the US, the Caribbean, Africa, Brazil, send us your feedback. Today we're in a very relaxed mood. I don't have a lot. I'm going to have a very laid back talk. And I'm going to bring in again this sister that we've had on for the last 2 weeks. And I spoke to her and I said, I need to speak some more with you. And she said, Carol, are you sure people want to hear from me? And I actually said to her, I'm not actually that bothered about what people want to hear. I want to hear you. So I was being really selfish. I am bothered about what people want to hear. But I think on a serious note, I've got Professor Femi Boga Asagai. I'm going to bring her in a minute. But I want to know, I want to ask her, when I do bring her in, where has she been all these years? And for those of you who weren't tuned in to the first time we spoke to Professor Femi about 2 weeks ago when we did the first of our relationship program, Professor Femi, if you notice the double barrel name is Bogle Asagai. Bogle because she is a descendant of the Jamaican freedom fighter Paul Bogle, and also the big sister of our legendary Queen of Lovers Rock over here in the UK, Sister Janet Kay. For all of you who may not be recognizing her name, if you don't live in this country, she did the amazing song Silly Games. Look it up. So as I've said, we are very relaxed today. We are just going to have a sister chat about varied topics. What I've been sensing since the sort of easing of this lockdown is frustration coming from not just our community, but from everyone. I connect with people of all persuasions and I talk with people, and the reoccurring sentiment is something's going on, we're confused and we don't like it. What can we do? So I thought, maybe we should just have a relaxed chat about anything, but in particular, as human beings, are we not to be about love? But first and foremost, let me bring in Professor Femi Boga Asagai. Welcome back again, sister. You are welcome again to the show. Hello.
Good afternoon. We're now at about 12:15 here in the US, so it's good afternoon for me. It's good evening for you. I've been doing well, still in lockdown, not going out unless it's absolutely necessary. This monster that is out here, who knows what it is? We don't know. Lots of speculation. We don't know. Those who are telling us they know, they don't know.
I agree.
So it's important, I think, to engage in a lot of reflection, a lot of meditation, and when I say prayer, I mean praying to not just any old thing or any old body. You have got to be in alignment with your people, your ancestors, those who will come to your guide, your angels, must be those who want good for you. So, we have a lot of reflection to do. And as people in the diaspora, I think we have the time to look at a broader world, get a broader understanding of ourselves, and begin to, I believe, become the pioneers that we were when we left the Caribbean to go to Europe, let's say, to rebuild Europe, and become the survivors and the thrivers that we are when we were taken out of Africa and brought to the West and strewn across the planet, not of our own volition. So we have some thinking and some reflection to do. And I suspect, what I'm experiencing here from people is not just the confusion, but an interest in understanding us in a way that begins to make sense. Because clearly, all of what we've done in the past in terms of our subscription to Western culture, our subscription to their values and their norms, and our striving to become like them, if you will, none of that seems to have worked for us. And it surely isn't working for them anymore, but it hasn't worked for us, not in a way that we can place value on, because we're still in a space where justice eludes us. And the question becomes, how long? How long? Mutabaruka has a poem that says, which one is it now? The one that says, it's a long time I sit on the wall, I watch you, or watch me. It's a
Wow.
long time I sit on the wall, or watch you, or watch me. You know, if you stay in a white man country too
Oh,
long,
long. You know,
too long.
we know the poem.
You know the poem and you know
We
the
know
poem.
the poem. But I wanted to ask you something personal about yourself. Where have you been? The feedback that I've been getting is, who is this sister? She has a wealth of knowledge. There are a lot of people out there, women out there, or people out there. I don't think they have anything on you, in terms of your delivery, your love. I've adopted you now as my spiritual mother. And
Thank you.
I've said that to you. Tell me a little bit about Femi Bogo Asagai before the professor. You have a lot to give the world. I feel that from you. I think you're an amazing mentor, your knowledge, and it's not just for our community. This is what I feel. Hence why I kind of move these shows that I do. I move with my spirit. I don't just put on a show for the sake of it. I try to get my direction from the Most High. I'm a praying, fasting woman. And it's not about frivolity for me. I try to stick to a narrative. And when I first started, I said, this is about connecting our history, the lost pieces, to try and bring us back on a road. And who am I? Who am I? Some of us are here with a mission to help guide to help guide individuals back. We might not come in a form or a shape that you expect or have the titles in front of our names, but we have a remit. And we try to walk in that remit. So who is Femi Bogo Asagai?
Let me say this. I mean, I'm. Where do I start? I was educated in Britain. I come out of the Caribbean, as you've already said. My parents are out of Jamaica, and I was raised in England. And I went to university in England. I trained as an educator, and I taught school in England, in Brent primarily. For a number of years, I taught economics, political science, law, commerce, social studies, all of the humanities and social science subjects. And I left the classroom when I realized that the impact was singular, and it was piecemeal. And our children were being treated in a manner that was not acceptable to me. In fact, I wrote a report in I think it's 1976, maybe, I'm not sure, can't remember, Can't remember. It's a long time. I wrote a report when I worked at the BCRC, which is the British Civil Rights Agency, that addressed the issue of our children and what was happening to them within the Brent school system. But you could actually translate that and transmit that to all of the other school systems in the country, and that resulted in my being vilified by the teachers union, the NUT, and educators and all kinds of other people. It was not an issue for me. It was not an issue for me simply because I felt a need to speak to what was happening to our children. Fast forward, I in Brent created, I guess, what you would call controversy. I'm not shocked at the fact that Brent seems to be the hub of what would be called British culture, British reggae, that kind of thing. Simply because we were doing that when I was there, and created a whole slew of political firsts, if you will, in terms of mayors, in terms of members of parliament. In fact, Paul and Janet Boateng moved to Brent at the time and
Mhm,
became RFP, and all of that. The excitement
mhm.
was going on. But then I got married and started to have children, and left the United States. Left the United States because my husband at the time, Kuba Assegai, was in the line of fire, as it were, because unbeknownst to me, he was a political person in a bigger way than I understood, in terms of his work in Africa and all of that. And he worked for the BBC and Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. At the time we left, he was under house arrest, quite frankly.
Mhm.
Um, And once I got married, came to the United States, I started raising children. But I went back into the field of education and civil rights. And that's what I've been doing since being here, but raising children primarily. And focused on raising my children because it occurred to me that, you can be as active as you choose to be. But if your own family is in disarray, then that activism means nothing. And as a person in the diaspora, it was important to me that my own family could be held together in a way that was meaningful to me and to us. And so, yes, I was still very active in the United States, but it's also a place that you can come and hide uh, once you kind of find a way to function here, because it's a complex society where you find all kinds of horrible things
Absolutely. I've lived there.
and
I know.
horrible,
Horrible things.
that blow your mind. I mean, there are things here that you just have never seen anywhere else on the planet. But if you can find a way to somehow be able to swim and function, you can do that. And I've been doing that. I've been on the professional lecture circuit, as it were, but stepped off of that. I stepped off of that because, again, I recognized and realized that you could either choose the economics, the money, and go and get as much of that as you can while watching your people disintegrate, or you could decide that the skills that you have, the resources that you have, you intend to put that into your people. And that's been my focus, working directly on the ground with my own people. So we owned a bookstore and
I
used
remember
it
that.
as a center of education, where we would teach our children and our people. So we'd have Saturday classes, we'd have authors and all kinds of people coming through the bookstore for purposes of educating our people about self, about history, doing the work that I think there's now a hunger for. Our people are now absolutely hungry for information about self. What did we do before the slave mode of production? Who were we? What is our contribution to humanity? Who are we? These are huge questions. And they're questions that we can take a lifetime to
To
answer.
answer.
Children will need to answer, and our children's children will need to answer, because we have to build again the civilizations from which we've come, you know.
Professor
So
Remy,
in here,
thank you. As I said, people, she's full. And one of the dreams I have one day is to get you over. And I've had some amazing guests thus far. And we need to have a forum, a live forum, where we can have you all together teaching and feeding, not just our people, but anyone that's in need of knowledge and truth and upliftment. You know, you said, I think this is quite a poignant piece, that you said it was very important for you as an activist, a representative of fixing brokenness, to ensure that your family was whole, almost being the proof of concept. And I think that's so, so important, because being experienced in the thing gives you more of a right to be able to deal with issues, i.e. you sat on my panel for 2 weeks in a row about relationships, giving advice that I have been pushing out to people and analyzing myself for my own life. But you can only give from I think that when it's real, when it comes from a position of experience, then it is valid. And it's not for too long. And even now, we tend to intellectualize our situation, or any situation, because we've got a piece of paper that says we are qualified to do so. And I give you a prime example. I remember when I had my daughter, she'll be 20 this year, I was being forced to have a vitamin K injection. I didn't know what it was, but I wouldn't take it, because I thought, why didn't you tell me about this when in the 9 months that I've been visiting you on these prenatal classes, suddenly when I had no other choice, you thought I'd be overcome by pain, you dropped this line on me, and you think that I would just say yes because I'm in pain. And I said, no, I'll hold this baby and I will find out what vitamin K is, or it was a vitamin shot that they wanted to give her that I didn't know about. Anyway, I didn't give it to her when she was born, to cut a long story short, but they wouldn't allow me to leave the hospital until she had it. And I said, well, we're going to stay here because she's not going to have it. I am aware now that she gets that naturally from the breast milk. And I breastfed her until she was 2 years old, which is what we should be doing. Anyway, they got a senior consultant to come down and speak to me. But the ironic thing I'll never forget is that his words to me was, if I had children, then I would also. And I said, so you don't have children? He says, no. So I said, well, you're not qualified to influence me on in this decision. So therefore, I will not be doing it. So my point is that in this society, we tend to take orders and instructions from individuals who have a piece of paper that qualifies them to do the role. And ultimately, the experience, the true life experience, isn't there. And I think that's one of the fundamental differences between, there are so many, but between our ancient civilizations and where we are now.
I agree. I absolutely agree with you. Experience is really critical to one's understanding. Intellectualizing is easy.
Are you ready?
Particularly if you've been trained to intellectualize.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you and I understand that. And we know we've seen our folks who have been trained in that way. And one of the things that happens when you've been trained in these institutions of higher learning in Europe or even in the United States is that once you leave those institutions, if you want to heal yourself, you're going to have to defrag. You're going to have to revisit yourself. You're going to have to strip yourself of the stuff that you've been given, because you've basically been educated out of who you are, because all of the information that you're given and that you've ingested tells you that you don't exist. You're not anybody. The only important people on the planet are of European ancestry and European descent. And so you have to go to a place where you reclaim self. And that's one of the things that we haven't done successfully, I don't believe. And certainly, I think we spoke about that during the other two sessions that we've had. We tend to hide behind those pieces of paper, not recognizing that that's the danger. We need to put those things down and literally begin to look at and evaluate some of the proverbs and things that our elders have given to us, you know.
And we also use those pieces of paper to actually exalt ourselves amongst our peers, even
Yes.
within our own community. I've got I've got a number of prerequisites in front of my name, so therefore I am probably a little bit more entitled than you are.
Yeah,
We
very
do
simple.
that a lot. Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
we do that, but we have to recognize it for what it is. It is a form of sickness. Okay, but it is. If you look at the statistics, certainly coming out of the United States, none of those pieces of paper have given Black people in America any more wealth than they had when they began. It has not given them generational wealth. It has not placed them in any kind of economic position that is close to or near to people of European ancestry, either with the same or similar qualifications, or in fact less. Okay, and so the idea that we use those pieces of paper to somehow distinguish ourselves among ourselves is just nonsense, because we are not able to use those pieces of paper to kick unqualified, uneducated, ignorant European people out of those positions that belong to many of us. And we know that. So we're lying to ourselves and pretending amongst ourselves. But you said something about love, which is important. We need to focus on that, because love is absolutely critical to our coming back together, our saving ourselves, and us understanding that concept. What do we mean when we talk about love? One of the things we do is we tend to think that it's something that occurs in our heart. It's something we need to be fluttering about. Well, there are different kinds of love, right? There are different sorts of love. And I think I said to you already, we love with our heads, not with our hearts. And for us as people in the diaspora, it is critical that we love with our heads. We love each other with our heads, so that there is rationality to what it is that we're doing. We're able to think. We're able to stop being emotional. Like right now, we're highly emotional. We're emotional because we cannot get over the George Floyd situation. Well, why can we not get over that situation? We need to ask ourselves, yes, there's room for anger. But in the midst of that anger, we've also got to be reflecting, and we've got to be planning, and we've got to be organizing. We need to understand very clearly the environment that we find ourselves in. We are sitting down in the West in a very dangerous place. Very dangerous place. Why am I saying it's dangerous? It's dangerous because the people who are in charge and the people with power have no interest in seeing us thrive.
I cannot agree more. We talked about protest, and we've all done it. We've all we've protested over our lives. We're seniors now, and we see like it's almost like Groundhog Day, where we've seen this all before.
Yes.
It's just that we are more connected with social media. We can actually record the stuff that has happened. There's been so many deaths in police custody. And whilst I'm not being insensitive to the situation that has happened over the last three weeks, I think the backlash of it and the anger, I do not understand, because emotion unchecked is dangerous. And what's happening over here now, you're seeing collages of individuals, black and white youth, that are wanted for a fray or whatever that happened around the time of the march. In 2011, we had a big situation where a young brother from a particular area in North London was shot by a police officer. This sparked what we call the London riots in 2011. Countless amounts of young people were brought to justice by kangaroo satellite courts. And as a consequence, a number of them are spending substantial amount of time in prison, some up to 30 years.
Absolutely. So we've got to be.
I see all of this is that we have to be less emotional about these things, because over the years it hasn't gotten us anywhere. And I believe that comes because I think somebody else pulls our strings. Number one, because our grounding of spirituality, whether we like it or not, is based on the Bible and the hermeneutics, which we talked about when we had Dr. Fearon Williams on the show, and somewhere in the psychology, the hermeneutics of how our history, which we know the scriptures is a collection of our history books, has been fed to us. So we're always in a position of servitude, always in a position of my life matters. Well, who are you petitioning to say your life matters to? Isn't it the same very people that has held you captive for so long? You don't own anything, so what are you smashing up? Other people's property? We need to stop and take a rain check.
This
When
is
I
why
sorry?
this is why I'm saying it's madness. We're engaged in and we're living in a madhouse, and we need to
Yes.
understand that
Yes.
that's what. Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
No. One of the I've heard there's a lot of initiatives going right now around Black economics. I'm not sure if it's worldwide. For instance, we have a drive called the Black Pound, which I believe it's going to be backed by particular members of parliament in particular regions of the UK and Ireland, if I read correctly. Now, this is advocating, we've had these drives where we're advocating a day for Black people to abstain from spending in the economy. And I thought to myself, are we being very real? Are we just knee-jerking here in this call out? And I don't want to berate or debase the intention, because the intention of unity is a very powerful one. So if this is about unifying our people in one accord, I think this is a very powerful call to action. However, if it's about having economic impact, you cannot have economic impact by abstaining from spending in a day. Because financial systems or impact is measured quarterly or yearly. So for there to be any sustained impact on these environments, on these systems, my people, we cannot just do a day. Because what it shows of us is the absence of critical thinking and riding on emotion. Because what emotion does, it doesn't allow you to think through the situation with a critical mind and recording and measuring or having an outcome and an impact in mind, almost like children.
Right.
And I'm of my community, so berate me if you wish. I am not offended if my people want to berate me. I just want to humbly suggest that we look at the broader picture and be very analytical in when we actually put out a call to action.
I agree. I absolutely agree with what you just said there. You know, and I don't think there's enough rational thinking going on. And there is some in some quarters, but we're not tapping into it. We need to tap into it. This is a moment, it seems to me, where we have got to get clarity a bit again about the environment that we live in, and then look at where we should really be building. Obviously, many of us are not going to pick up and leave the West. We're not going to do that. But this is now a time to look closely at what Marcus Messiah Garvey talked about when he talked about building our homeland, building our own lands. Because without the liberation and freedom and self-determination of that continent called Africa, the rest of us out here in Europe, in the Americas, South America, and so on, are going to constantly be fighting other people for them to recognize our humanity, because that's really what we're doing. We're fighting white folks to tear down what they have so they can share it with us and give us. I mean, it's just very contradictory to me. You know, I've been on the planet long enough and engaged in enough struggle fighting so-called, well, I should not say so-called, let me explain it in a moment, but fighting racism, to know that you will go to your grave fighting racism and your children will come and fight racism.
Many of our ancestors have.
Well, right, will come and fight racism. You've got to be building something. You know, it's the dirty glass and the clean glass. You got to set the clean glass next to the dirty one. All right? To know that you want to be where the clean glass is. So one of the things that I experience here in the United States is that they have a definition of racism that allows white people to look black people in the face and tell them they're racist. When I started hearing that, I said, what kind of nonsense is this? What kind of definition are you all using to be able to call black people racist? Now, when I was in the business of you know, multiculturalism, anti-racism, and all that kind of stuff, which I leave alone, because I know it's one of those things going nowhere. Yes, you'll earn some money, but it's not going very far. You'll get old and go to your grave. Then yes, the power plus prejudice stuff, and you know, you have to have power to impact people. But I'm going to read the definition of racism that I think our people ought to take on and utilize in order to understand what we should be doing, because we should be on that path to refine and regain ourselves, our souls, our nature, who we are, you know. So this particular definition may have been heard by some people, but I think it doesn't do any harm to read it again. So allow me to take some time
Thank you.
to
Yeah.
share with you the definition of racism that I think should be operative for us, African people. It is the local and global power structure that is maintained by persons who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined. This system consists of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response, as conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity. That's education, economics, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The ultimate purpose of the system of racism and white supremacy is to prevent white genetic annihilation. On Earth, a planet in which the overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white. That's black and brown people. By those same white-skinned people. All of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetically recessive white-skinned people. Now,
is that Frances Cress Welsing?
Comes directly from Dr. Frances Cress
Welsing. Yes.
You will find it in the ISIS papers.
Papers, yes.
Okay, get that book. I recommend that book to every African in the diaspora.
As you started reading it, I read that in the 80s, and I shouted, is that Frances Cress Welsing, the ISIS? Because when I recognized the text, and I read it, goodness, almost 30 years ago.
Probably because myself, Francis, and Brent brought Dr. Welsing to Brent in 1984.
Okay, wow. Very powerful book.
And we moved her around England in 1984, and she was a powerhouse. Do you hear me? A powerhouse. And the importance of this definition is because Dr. Welsing is a psychiatrist, you know, and she studied psychiatry. And in order to do psychiatry, you have to be trained as a medical doctor. So she wasn't a psychologist. She's a psychiatrist. And I'm saying is because her spirit is still here. She's still with us. Of course, she's passed on, you know. But this definition allows us, as people of African ancestry, to understand psychologically what we're stuck in, what we're dealing with. It forces us to confront our reality and to stop running around behaving as though everything is okay and some of them are not too bad. Well, of course, some of them are not too bad. Not everybody's all bad, right? And not everybody's all good. But the fact is, you need to live in your reality. When you live in your reality, you have a better relationship with people. I have phenomenal relationships with white people. They love me.
You know, it's funny because if my position is, I know who I am in terms of my genealogy. I maintain that we are Shemite people.
Yes.
Descendants of the lost 12 tribes of Israel.
Yes.
And as such, our history and our demise has been foretold in our prophetic words of scripture, which has been canonized, whittled down to a mere 33 books when there were over 200 books of prophecy about ourselves.
Absolutely.
I'm also aware that the region in which we hail from is not the ancient name or the indigenous name or the, I'm going to say Edenic. And the reason why I say Edenic, because I say that if you're going to look at the creation story about the Garden of Eden, we were
Garden
those people,
Yes.
but it was not called Africa.
No.
It's Scipio Africanus, who was a Roman general in, I think it's 139 BC. If there are any historians out there, please correct me, that conquered these regions and gave it this name. There were many ancient names for that region: Kush, Kabulan, Ethiopia,
Ethiopia,
Canaan, Babylon, Kemet,
Yeah.
Mitzrayim. This is
Right.
what the ancient name for Egypt is. Many. So here are a people that are wearing the names of those who captured them.
Right.
Here are people whose land has been given its name from its oppressor.
Right. Right.
But we just want economic power. And we want to say our lives matter. I'm also very aware that when you have lost your spiritual grounding, and we've been talking about the force field that protects, connecting back to the ancestors and understanding who the creator is for you, then how can you as a people have a stable ground?
You cannot. You cannot. And so that's why I say all the time, we have so much work to do. We have so much work to do. And this is a platform that, to my mind, is powerful. It's powerful because it gives us room to be able to go down this path, because whether we like it or not, our character matters. Who we are, the things that we stand for, the values, the principles, the norms, the mores, all of that matters. Because that's what makes us who we are.
Yes.
Where we stand right now in the West is that we've had a superimposed identity placed upon us.
Yes.
So that we're thought of as the dregs of the earth. They're thieves, they're liars, they're cheaters, they're destroyers, they're all of those horrible things.
Yes.
None of which is intrinsically who we are. But our character matters, and we need to be working on them. For example, character traits like jealousy, greed, hate, envy, these are learned behaviors. They're learned behaviors. And we will not understand that those behaviors can be unlearned, but guess what? They don't have to be learned in the first place if you know
who you come from. We are. Professor Fenny, I've gone past, I know who I am. I am tasked with helping to teach our people about their Hebrew and Israelite history. But I have also gone past judging someone based on the color of their skin. Because I understand that what causes hate, which manifests in the term of racism, comes from a lower self.
Yes.
And is wicked. And my mom used to say to me, "I'll sin," spell S-I-N. So whether you
doesn't matter
and stab your brother, like the knife crime that is coming on, it is very rife in the UK, and gun crime in our community is very rife in the US. And the paid assassin that knelt on that brother's neck, and the many paid assassins from the system who join the police force, because the police force are meant to be public servants to protect the community, not murdering them. So what your act and their act, there's no distinguish between them. There's no distinguishable difference between them. And when I understand that wickedness and hate exists in humanity at every strata, and the objection is to rise up in your God self, and this is what the laws of Moshe was able to help us do, because we were a mess in the motherland, in the ancient land. Let us talk truth with our family. We were a mess. And if you read our scriptures, you will see it. There was deceit, there was lying, there was backbiting, there was jealousy, there was infidelity, there was bestiality, there was homosexuality. Let's call the truth for what it is. Sodom and Gomorrah was not an ancient Romanic civilization. It was black.
Right there. Yes.
Okay. If you want to use that terminology to describe a group of people. So let's hold a mirror up to self. And I'm ready for the abuse, because it's about dealing with self. And I'm going to call it our people. Let us deal with ourselves. Let us go back to the history books. and see why a mighty nation of great people have fallen under the thumb of a minority people, and we outnumber people of color, of tone, outnumber people of non-color on this planet something like 10 to 1. So how can you be a minority, and how can the minority have a thumb over on top of you for so long if something didn't happen? I believe our remit on this planet is to help to advocate the love of the supreme creator as an example of his will to humanity. Our Father who art in heaven, heaven doesn't mean in the sky, who art sitting in higher places, thy kingdom come on earth, this realm, as it is in the higher places. Thy will be done. What was his will? Love.
Right, but the symbology is important, and that's why it needs to be explained, and that is why purpose becomes so critical. And our folks need to understand, as I've said, character, because we're here striving to be godlike. Now, if God is perfection, then you ought to be working every single day on you in order to reach perfection, right? And we're not doing that. We are not doing any of that. What we do is we hug religion, the institution of religion, and we follow along. We follow along. I am amazed. I was in the seminary so 2 years or so ago, doing seminary work. You know, you go to seminary to do the religious stuff. And I could not believe that one of my professors actually told an entire class that the ancient language of Jesus was no longer spoken in Ethiopia, Amharic. I had to, hello, how do you do that? I've got friends literally in my house, Ethiopian friends speaking Amharic. How are you going to tell a whole class of these people here that that language no longer exists? It's disappeared.
But it needs to be qualified because the Aramaic came from the Hebrew, which was the basic. Yes. And yes. So that needs to be qualified. And you're quite right. You know, I wanted to do this program actually about the dissemination of the white Jesus character, because I think this is very, very important. And I can hear my Christian brother says it doesn't matter what color he is. Well, if it didn't matter, why did you change it? If something didn't matter, why did you alter the course of history to change the very identity of the individual, the historical individual that existed? You haven't done it for anybody else. How would you like it if I came along and changed the identity of Winston Churchill or Abraham Lincoln and painted him in a character and a form that he was not? So it's a grave crime to have done that.
Question that you asked, though, that goes to the question that you asked, a very profound question that you asked about what happened and why are we now in a situation where, you know, because we obviously engaged in transgression, that's clear, but why are we now in a situation where the minority on the planet have such control over the majority of the people on the planet? You know, that's part of that process, right? Because you have to, if I control your mind, I don't have any need to worry about what you do with your body, because you're going to move and do the things that will benefit me and that I expect you to do, you know. So yes, that kind of programming, to my mind, is going to be necessary and critical, because there's so much that we have to peel back. You know, there's so much learning that has to take place. It's almost like an onion, you know, and we have to take off the different layers of the onion to begin to fully understand
where we're at,
where we veered off, what we did that was so very wrong. But we've got to get on the journey. So many of us are not on that journey, Carol. We're not on that journey. We're not even thinking that there's a journey to be on, because we're so bought in to where we are and what is happening. You know, you have to know when you don't have a dog in that fight, or that is not your fight. You know, you don't have, there's a fight that's out here that's got very little, if anything, to do with us.
Yes.
fight is going on. We have work to do.
We have work to do. And, you know, my sister, I want to show, I think that, you know, it's in our culture, really, we are a loving people. You can hear it reflected in our music. And I made some notes about our elder musicians who have passed and what they advocated in their music. John Coltrane, one of my favorite jazz artists of all time, Love Supreme. Marvin Gaye, and in observation, I would say he was the first one to start preaching sustainability in the music. What's going on?
What's
Bob
going
Marley, One Love. And
Yeah.
I've named three greats that really, in our deep down in our psyche, there is this need to express this love. But
Yes.
one of our judgment is that we never showed it amongst ourselves. You can blame it on the Willie Lynn speech, the cycle. But it's time for us now to shake off those karmic debts because we have been released spiritually.
Yes.
But one thing that we have not done is repentance. And that's another show. I want to show a video of my daughter, actually. She wrote this speech for a big competition, that's an inter-school competition over here. And she was 15 at the time, nearly 5 years ago. And she won the speech with this. She won the competition with this speech. She was invited to Parliament because they saw her potential. She didn't want to go because she felt that that it was too controlled, and I don't blame her. But she was addressing the racism that she felt at school, being in a school where a minority, people of her skin color, I hate using this term, black, minority Israelite is what I'm going to say. And she didn't see, she saw people for who they were, but that's how I brought her up. And she encountered this amongst her peers, some of them not even having traveled out of the UK, they didn't have passport, so they hadn't encountered other cultures. She's well traveled. And she wrote this in rebut. And afterwards, I want to discuss with you the underlying thread of her speech. So can we just play Nia Muhammad's "Why Do You Judge Me" speech that she did representing her school, Epping St. John's, in 2015.
Will I always be a second-class citizen? If it's not my color, it's my gender. There are 88,000 racial incidents reported in schools each year. 88,000, and I've been one of them. And I ask you, who's doing the abusing? Children. And I'm told to move on and to forget it, to block out the ignorant and derogatory comments made. But no child is born to hate. Let's backtrack a little. Those very first precious moments when your mother's holding you in her arms, numb to the pain that she's just endured, she looks into your eyes and she says, "I love you." Are those words filled with hate and ignorance? Does she hope that one day her child may grow up to be a racist? Now you tell me, should she still love you? Young black males are often perceived as thugs, street rats, and gangbangers. Oh wait, let me not forget that good old chicken lover. If you were to see my older brother Kai, 6 foot tall, looks a lot like me, so you know he's got to be handsome, right? Stereotypically, you'd expect him to speak like this, family, get me dog blood. But what if I was to tell you that my brother Kai attends one of America's top private boarding schools? Now, do you still picture Kai as this uneducated youth on the street? You see, some may say that the picture I painted is far too black and white, but therein lies the issue, black and white. You may say that for many years now, humanity has done its best to try and unite, and of course, matters are improving. That I can't deny, and to say nothing remains to be done would be a terrible lie. Now, imagine the prejudice that I face as a young black woman. I'm expected to aspire to that perfect weave instead of that perfect profession. I'm expected to have a big booty like Nikki instead of big dreams. You see, this is me raising awareness for equality because racism and discrimination is still a problem in today's society. When you look at a garden, what do you see? Many beautiful colors, right? It's what makes the garden so special. We need to look at humanity in the same way because The diversity amongst us is what makes us beautiful. As the great Nelson Mandela once said, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if you can learn to hate, then you can be taught to love. But love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite.
As they say, out of the mouths of babes. And don't you just love, I mean, I love the UK system, the school uniforms, right?
Yes.
We just love that. There's something about that system that is still maintained in the Caribbean. You know, everything is, in everything there's good and bad, right? So she,
That was just brilliant.
and
Absolutely
that's,
brilliant.
thank you. And that's a young, I didn't get her permission to show it actually, but I'll tell her after. I might be sued.
Way to do
There's a
that.
lawsuit coming out. Yeah.
You do as you say. But no, it
Yeah.
was phenomenal at 15 years old to be that thoughtful about what's really pretty complex. I mean, it's a complex thing that she was talking about there, you know, in terms of her understanding of it. You know, if you can be taught to hate, because we are.
Oh.
You're not born hating anybody, you know. Love is a natural thing. That feeling is natural, right? But you're not born to hate anybody. She did a phenomenal job there. I'm not surprised she won that. You know, the gender issue that she raised there also, you know, that's a huge one that I think we need to be talking about and discussing, because we're getting caught up in that war in the
In that
West,
vacuum of hate.
of hate, where we again mistakenly believe that we're at war with our men. You know, that's again very unhealthy, and that puts us in a place of again crazy madness. That whole gender issue. We have got to begin to live our lives with intention. You know, that's the new word, as it were, intention. But it's important. It's an important one because it means being engaged. It means knowing what you're doing every day. It means knowing what your actions, you know, are likely to do, or likely to impact people around you, be it your family members or the wider community. So we have to be conscious in our lives. Too many of us are asleep. Too many of us are kind of moseying on through. But I think this time that we're in right now, it's almost woken up the entire planet. It's woken people up. So those who understand that this is a time to plan, this is a time to be rational, this is not a time for emotionalism and for frivolity, will do that which needs to be done, and will make some choices that are likely to be choices that will help us to build the kind of a future that we need to have. But I absolutely agree with you about understanding that humanity is what should concern all of us. Humanity is what.
We've lost her. I thought I lost you there. Sorry. I've lost you.
Am I back with you, Carol?
You're back with me now. Yes. Thank you.
Am
Can
I
you
back?
hear me? Yes, you're back, and I can hear you and see
Oh
you
boy.
clearly. She can't hear me. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know that I can hear you. But you know, again, I'm saying humanity is our concern, and that's where we should be concerned. But for me, my emphasis in terms of the work that I do is with and on my own people, because I am clear that we're the ones who need the healing and who need the foundation to rebuild. So I'm not confused about that. And I think that we should strive to get that kind of clarity, so that when we act, we do so deliberately and intentionally in our own favor. So we're looking out for the interest of our own people, you know, and not to the detriment of anybody
else, which is what these systems have been built on. And I hear you. And I think
I'm not able to hear you. I'm not able to hear you.
I'm gonna talk then just to the screen that she's gone. That whilst Professor Femi states that her remit is for her people, I believe that the world, the nations can learn from watching or from us in terms of how we have held to a degree our composure throughout the centuries of what we have been subjected to. And I think we should commend ourselves for that, but also be controlled in how we allow emotions to overtake us. Because, to be honest, we have to take ownership for some of the causes of where we are right now, and the fact that we still feel held down by an economic and a European or a system that doesn't give us freedom, justice, and equality. And that's not something that you ask for, it's something that you are born with. So I don't get the asking for and rioting for. I don't get it. So we need to go back to the drawing board, and I say that with humility, especially in a time like now when we know the prophecy has been lifted. Sorry, Professor Femi, you were saying?
No, saying natural rights. There's a lack of understanding of natural rights. What constitutes natural rights? Nobody can take away or give you your natural rights.
Yes.
You know, so the idea that you're begging someone for that is just, what can I say? It's a lack of understanding of your own humanity, you know. And the idea that we continue to beg also has, it has to stop. Although I fully recognize that for as long as we are in the West, we're going to be caught in a scenario, because nobody gives up power. And the bottom line is what we're dealing with is power, you know. And if we expect that those who are in control and who have power will give that power up to us, then we're delusional. We continue to be in the crazy house.
And you've hammered the nail on the head. And this is why I always advocate that we do go back to scripture, because in it you will see the history. And we know that this power structure has had a beginning and it has an end. And it's coming close to the end. And if we knew that it's a time for our rising, we don't mean uprising and revolt. This is a time for our spiritual uprising, because when you are spiritually awake, your power, which is what you shared with me, is unfailing, or it doesn't waver. When you are spiritually in tune to who you are, your power is unmatched, and they can continue to perpetrate as they are with us, because they know that they've got us spiritually in balance. They know this.
Right. Absolutely.
We have 3 minutes, Professor Femi. I've really enjoyed this Sister Talk to Talk. You know what is amazing as well? I mean, I'm looking at the screen and I've got 11 viewers. Really? If I was talking about illicit sex, music, showing my body, I would have a stream of viewers.
Don't
but
worry
it shows you the appetite of our people.
Don't worry.
I'm not worried. I'm not worried. I'm just saying.
Do not even mention it. I'm telling you, do not mention it.
Yeah.
All right. We don't know what we need.
Exactly.
We do not know what we need. People will find the show. People
we know
will
this.
share the show.
We know this.
Even.
Thank you for that. And it's an observation. It was an observation that when we are discussing real issues that has a basis, we're absent. But yet we complain. The scripture, the book of Ezekiel, calls us a hard-hearted, stiff-necked people.
Okay, so there you go. You know, there is an absolute need. Again, I've lived on the planet long enough to know, and as of you, I'm sure, to know that there is a need for this kind of conversation over and over and over again, because you will not be taken care of in any of those systems that we all interact with in the West.
Absolutely.
None of those systems. You know, I've been fortunate enough to retire. I retired 5 years ago. So I'm doing things and reinventing myself because I've chosen to do that. most of us are in the system where we're literally going all day long for purposes of paying somebody else to do something. Somebody else. We're on the rat wheel, if you like. All right? We're on the rat wheel. We're just running around. Okay? So instead of listening and engaging in analysis and rational thinking about doing something different, we would prefer to turn our backs.
Absolutely.
Hey, that's okay, because it's not forever. It's not forever. That will change. So we
Absolutely.
give the benefit of the doubt. That will change.
Absolutely. And thank you. I'm wrapping up rapidly. Thank you so much for agreeing to sit with me yet another week. I have so much love and honor for you. You are a priestess, a mother, a goddess. I love you. I love your knowledge. That is me out. Remember, people, and I believe this is a message for all over the world. Love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. This is Carol CJ Rose with Conversations with CJ Rose. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you, Professor Femi Bogle.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Audience.